if you have a large team, a good rule of thumb is your goal monthly revenue should be 2.5 times your payroll.
Hey, Pat and Doug here again with another episode of the Wealthy Fitness Entrepreneur. And today we are going to unpack memberships and pricing. So, Doug, kick us off here.
Yeah, so memberships and pricing, I think where I would start is, not let's set the tone and let's not just randomly price our services and build out memberships based upon what we think we should charge or what maybe our competitors are charging or what somebody who is doing a similar model is charging. Yes, there are definitely guidelines. But I kind of want to walk through some numbers to think about when you do your pricing, because it's really hard having gone through it. We all started probably in the early days pricing relatively low to try to get volume into your gym. I know I was, $99 a month offering small group personal training when I first started. And, you quickly realize, yeah, you can get some volume there, but, you're never gonna price yourself into a healthy margin. So that's where I would start is let's unpack the pricing from a more calculated stance, not just here's what my competitors are doing or here's what I think I should charge because it sounds good.
Yeah, the common thing that I see with owners pricing their services are either this is what everybody else is doing, so this is what the market will bear, never giving thought to, well, how did those people arrive at their numbers? Or, this is what everybody else in the market is doing, so I need to be a little bit below that so I can come in and compete. And how many times have we seen this race to the bottom, never giving thought to profitability, never really considering, well, hey, these people are priced at this, but I don't know any of the other details about their business. I don't know what their overhead is. I don't know if that's just their front-facing pricing and they've got upgrades that maximize lifetime value in some other fashion. So let's talk through some things that people can use where there's actually a solid foundation for pricing.
For sure. So if we unpack, memberships and pricing as kind of two separate things, right? So if we start with memberships, because that's kind of the easier one to talk about. I love recommending having 2 to 4 options on your price sheet, right? So when you're presenting with, when you're sitting down with a prospect and they're interested in training with you, having only one option can be pretty limiting. And at the same time, we don't want to be the Cheesecake Factory and have 17 options that they choose from. So 2 to 4 seems to be the sweet spot, where there's multiple choice. You can still be prescriptive in your sales and recommending one, but have that downsell if price is one of the objections. So 2 to 4 options. As far as what those options are, think, option 3 or 4 at the top is going to kind of be your kitchen sink. What can you add? Is there training? Is there accountability? Is there, this is often kind of the unlimited membership for a lot of training gyms. That price, typically we found we would sell it, 10% of the time. You're not going to sell it a lot. What it does do, though, is it kind of anchors and makes the other prices look a little bit more favorable, and also introduces the client to here are some other things aside from training that you could purchase down the road. So even if you don't ever sell that top option, we want to build that top option out because it makes the others look better. Where I would put most of your focus is what are those middle options. If you have 3, it would be what is option number 2. And if you have 4 different options, what are options 2 and 3? Because that's what you're going to sell 60, 70, 80% of the time. And so when we look at that, that's going to be, think of your ideal client and what do they need? How many workouts, if you train your ideal client, how many workouts, a month or a week are they getting? I'm going to build the membership to that ideal client because that's what I'm going to sell the most. And then option one is kind of your downsell, right? It's not ideal. In sports performance, that's kind of your in season or your once a week. For adult fitness, that may be, 5 sessions a month. Of course, they're not going to get phenomenal results, but it's better than zero, which is what they're doing right now. And at least it gets them introduced to their culture. So that's how we think of kind of membership ranges, with, ideally no more than 10 or 20% buying that bottom option, the far majority buying that middle option, and then having that higher option as a kind of kitchen sink option to. And you'd be surprised the amount of the not the amount, but the people that you would never guess. Like, no, like we've had people that have said, no, I don't. We've recommended the middle option. They said, no, what about this option over here? So that's how I would think about memberships before we break down pricing.
Yeah, I think historically we gravitated to three programs on the front end, three options, occasionally offering four, but typically following that same format. I think a lot of people really sleep on the price anchor, that kind of top end program. And if you look at what people who spend a lot of time and money on pricing, on buyer behavior, there'll be tabs that'll say most popular, and it'll be the offer in the middle. But having that anchor makes makes that middle option seem more palatable. I know that when we have historically sold the different prices, we also would occasionally try to help people understand, okay, this is a great fit for this type of person, or for this person with these circumstances. This is a great fit for a person with these circumstances. And, our ideal client would be the person that we would describe the circumstances that they typically had, and they would be a fit for that mid tier. And it allows people to kind of almost see themselves in whatever program that you're talking about. And it's a little bit of a relief, right? Like if I'm describing to you, hey, this type of person chooses this mid-tier program, there's a little bit of a sigh of relief. Oh, he wasn't telling me I had to choose the most expensive option. So, yeah, just some things that I know that historically have helped me sell.
Yeah, for sure. I love kind of putting an avatar to each membership option. Before we hit on pricing, a couple of other nuggets I would want to throw in there. This is, I don't want to make an assumption. I know this is usually common practice nowadays, but just to make sure we hit on kind of what I would share as best practices. Certainly, our memberships we want to be reoccurring. You can go month to month, you can go a longer term commitment. I think so much of that is going to be based upon your ideal client. We have gym owners that we work with in, say, Arizona, where they're dealing with snowbirds, and that's very common in that market. And so trying to sell a 12-month membership to somebody in Arizona compared to, here in Maine, I'm going to have a little bit easier time because, yeah, they're going to go away for vacations here and there, but they're not, snowbirding most of the time. So just think, membership length, commitment length is largely based on your avatar. We would always do a 12-month price and then have month to month if they want the flexibility at a little bit more of a premium. The other thing that I would consider is to look at billing frequency and positioning, and this will bleed into pricing. Positioning your memberships based on weekly pricing is something that we tested and saw good success with. And so you're able to, instead of charging, $3.99 a month, you're able to charge $99 a week and bill every 4 weeks. That way, there's a little bit of psychology to seeing $99 a week. And arguably the person that's paying that price for training is not price sensitive, but it still definitely helps kind of, that a percentage of people tip over the edge. And I think just presents it in a much more kind of tangible and palpable way. So the biweekly or every 4 week bill cycle with weekly pricing. So as far as pricing goes, there's a couple different formulas that I would overview. If you have a large team, meaning in this industry, three, four, five plus team members, it's not you're not a solopreneur, you're not just have the occasional part-timer. A good rule of thumb is your goal monthly revenue, so how much you want to make in a month, should be 2.5 times your payroll, right? So if you take, for simple math, if your payroll's 20 grand a month right now, you want your revenue, your gross revenue, to be around 50 grand a month, right? That puts your payroll around 40%. So if we say that our goal is 50 grand a month, then I would want to look at, well, how many clients do I want to serve and make $50,000 a month? And that's going to be based on, obviously, we're going to have our model support that. But if we ultimately get to the answer of what do I want my average client or member to pay in a month? So if I want to work with 100 clients and make 50 grand, well, then that means my average client is going to have to pay $500 a month.
No.
And so when we look at that, it's saying, okay, my middle option is going to be 500. And then I'm going to build out something on the higher end and build out something on the lower end. So that way you're taking into account, your goal revenue, not, the competitors, not anything that is just kind of throw it on the wall and see if it sticks. It's more based upon what you want your ideal client to be paying per month.
Yeah, I think that arriving at that number based on what your objectives are is something that gets overlooked a lot. But I mean, really, that's what we're doing, right? Like that's what we're trying to do is reverse engineer whatever the outcomes we want are. And so saying, okay, if I need to make $50,000 a month to have the business I want, to have the margins I want, to support the payroll or the staff that I'm going to have, then, being able to be clear about this, being able to say, okay, well, now we have to deliver something worth more than $500 a month also starts to bleed into, okay, these are the standards that we're going to have to meet for client experience. These are the type of people that we're going to have to market to. So it allows you to narrow your focus when it comes to marketing. It allows you to optimize your service delivery. So, I think that's one of the things that people really miss the mark on, and I don't want to get too far off track, is if you start from the inside out and you build with this in mind, it allows you to be more focused when you're making your decisions going forward. Because if you are pursuing people that are $500 a month people, then the marketing choices that you're going to make are automatically narrowed somewhat, right? So, I think that it's not just cobbling together this idea and that idea. It's saying, okay, let's start with the outcome we want, the business we want to have. And if we work our way out from stuff like this that we're talking about with our model, it makes those future decisions when it comes to things like marketing much, much easier.
For sure. And this is something that, you want to be evaluating your pricing and memberships at least once a year. I'm not saying you need to always increase them every single year, but you want to evaluate them because one, your model may change, right? If you're trying to get, for example, if you're trying to service 200 clients versus 100 clients in that $50,000 model, your price points are going to be different, right? If you only need 100 clients, if you only want to work with 100 clients, but a high-end $500, that's a completely different model compared to if you want to go chase 200 clients, paying 250, that's probably more that small group model, right? And so making sure that it kind of all is aligned with the avatar that you want to attract. And then that ideal client, what model do they best fit in? If you want to work with, a highly injured client, they're probably going to need like a semi-private or even one-on-one setting. You can't want to work with that avatar in a large group setting and charge large group prices. It's just not going to work. So I would always start with, who do you want to work with? What model is best for them? And then within the model that you're delivering, what kind of revenue do you want to generate? And keep in mind, this is like everything in business. This is a moving goalpost because, I remember when my payroll was 20 grand a month and, it got up to, at our last year, it got up to 40 grand a month in payroll. So you're like, you can't even fathom sometimes where you're at today versus where you want to be a year or two from now. And so when you factor in your expenses, when you factor in, payroll being the largest one, that's why I like to use payroll. There's other ways we can look at it, but payroll for established businesses and doing that multiplier of 2.5 is a good revenue target. Because it keeps you honest, because that way if payroll climbs up, you know that revenue also has to climb up so that you can keep that same margin.
Awesome. Well, anything else you want to dig into when it comes to memberships and pricing?
The last thing I would say is just the presentation of this. So we've built it out, right? We have our memberships and pricing, and most of us are doing, consultative sales, right? We're meeting with somebody. You're not going to sell two, three, $400 a month over the phone. You're probably, if you're running brick and mortar, you're going to meet them in your facility. Now, obviously, if you're doing online training, that's different. But if you're running brick and mortar, you're most likely meeting with this person. And I think, in today's day, there's a lot to be said with the presentation of it. So we like a oversized, almost like a mini poster with your nice graphically designed 3 options, 4 options, lay it all out. Have it, throw it up on Fiverr or whatever, and have somebody kind of throw your brand colors behind it. Have it look decent. I've seen too many gym owners, they send me their pricing and it's, like written in chicken scratch, or it's like, on Microsoft Word. And that's fine, 10 years ago or 5 years ago, or if you're selling, a $49 a month health club membership. But I think for the avatars that most of us want to work with, I do think there's weight in the presentation of it. And also by having it graphically designed nicely, it is in between you and the client, and you can be much more prescriptive with your sale to say, hey, as we spoke about earlier, based upon what I learned today, here's what I recommend for you. And they can kind of visually see the differences and make the decision from there. So just make sure the presentation is professional.
Yeah, I think the last thing that I'll even touch on with memberships or pricing is that I mean the market evolves, right? The When I got into the market, which is obviously a pretty long time ago, the common practice was packages sold prepaid, and largely in one-on-one services. But I know that we worked very hard to try to get people to adopt recurring membership subscription models, largely 12-month programs for a long time. And then the market continued to evolve, and there were a lot more monthly programs. Now we've seen the market evolve to people doing weekly pricing. But there's so many people that haven't kind of kept moving with things, and they've kind of tethered themselves to what they were doing at one point, or they've tethered themselves to the pricing that they had at a certain point. I mean, I saw an interesting image the other day where it compared like Subway $5 footlongs to now $6 6-cent sandwiches, and it's just things evolve. So I think our objective when it comes to your membership model and your pricing is to continue to do what you alluded to, like put it under the microscope. It doesn't mean that you have to change your prices every 12 or 18 months. It means that you should be reviewing your prices. It means that you should be reviewing how you're billing. Have consumer preferences changed? Has the marketplace or circumstances evolved? Because I mean, we want to be, we want to be keeping up with the way that people make decisions, and not kind of making them feel like we're not the best option with things that are really relatively simple to change.
For sure. Agree.
All right. Well, that is us unpacking some membership and pricing stuff, and we'll be back with another episode soon. See ya.